everybody, and welcome to tonight's Blank Collar Meetup on the blockchain. The Blank Collar. Work is for bots and life is for humans. The idea that in the future you're going to be working together with the robots to become your best augmented self and work together with the technology is what the Blank Collar is all about. This philosophy comes from our managing director at Link Marketing Services, Kristian Kabashi. The problem at the moment is that companies focus on the technology and how to implement it. At the Blank Collar, we want to focus on the people and the culture and the process and how this technology can support those things in the digital world. Here at the Blank Collar, we're really excited and curious about the emerging technologies that help shape the future of work and their impact on society. So tonight, we're diving into blockchain. Fast forward 10 years, we are living in the buzz of blockchain, we have crypto kitties, and we live around the corner from Crypto Valley. So how did this happen? Why is blockchain so important? Those are some of the questions we'll get into tonight. First off is our speaker, Kris Pawluk, who very generously stepped in for Joanna Pawluk, as she unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. Kris is a former Googler and current co-founder at a really cool startup, Orion Vault, which focuses on blockchain and art. So I'd like to welcome Kris to the stage.
Brief introduction to art and culture, right? Why we find it so fascinating and why we decided to devote a substantial amount of our life to this project. Is if you look at the human history, as far as we can know, art and culture was always accompanying us as a species. Before we invented money, we were already creating art. So art is something very close to our nature. It's basically who we are. It's an expression of us. But so far, the last major innovation in art happened approximately 500 years ago, right? That's when more modern setup of a gallery, auction house, artists, patrons developed. And since then, it didn't change much. It's a very old-fashioned market. And it's ripe for the next phase. And if we are trying to understand what will happen in the future, there are a few ways to do that. One of the ways is to look through the first principles, right? So to boil down something to very basic fundamentals and observe and try to go from there forward. The first one is digitization, right? Something very obvious. You know, not so far ago we were writing hand letters, and it was really important the way we wrote them. They were precious physical objects, and now we chat, right, send emojis, and we digitize human interactions. The second principle that we see that are touching multiple markets is sustainability, and what I mean by it is a business sustainability. In current example, Bitcoin, right? It's a distributed network, so there is no central bank issuing Bitcoins, no central bank validating transactions, so how is it done? Well, it's done because there is a reward for people who do that, right? Miners get reward in Bitcoin for facilitating the system. So even if one miner goes out, another will step in. If one exchange fails, another will step in. So the business model is sustainable. It's written in it. And the third thing is the social business model or value allocation. You need to look carefully how you allocate value. Every time in history you have a huge value disparities. Those ideologies fail, those companies fail. And we believe that Bitcoin can help us, blockchain can help us to tackle all of those things, especially in the art and culture world. So very briefly, those three things. So first is digitization. We can create a digital asset class, right, thanks to the blockchain. So you can imagine that a lot of modern art has struggled with selling because it's digitized, right? How do you sell performance? How do you sell music? How do you sell digital photography if it can be copied endless times, right? No one wants to buy it. But you can code an ownership on the blockchain. And yes, there are copies, but there is only one original. And everyone knows who has this one original piece, and only they have the right to trade it. Most of the art, 95, 99% of art is not for sale. It's in the basement of museums. For example, Mona Lisa, right? People want to buy it, maybe $1 billion. Louvre won't sell it, right? But Louvre also needs money. So how do you struggle? You have so many artworks that you cannot sell. They are worth so much. Maybe you create a mirror. You create a digital masterpiece. One and only digital Mona Lisa certified on blockchain by Louvre. The second thing is the sustainability, right? So okay, so we have this infrastructure of creating digital masterpieces. How do you make it so that it works, so that people can make money on it? Right? You create a blockchain-based marketplace where people can deal directly between themselves because ownership is written on blockchain. You don't need to trust multiple middlemen, experts, and your friends to validate an artwork, right? It's ridiculous that you are buying 100 million worth art now and you need to trust someone that it's, you know, it's original, and then you feel afraid of checking whether it's really is original, because if you bought it and it's fake, you know what you do, you know, like you sue them, but whether you get your money back. But here you can do a direct transaction. Ownership is on blockchain. It's clear which address owns this art piece. You can do it quickly. You can do it much more cheaply than currently because you don't have all those people in the middle. The third part, which I like a lot when we get to her, but it's a social business model, or how you can differently distribute value. We have hundreds of thousands of pieces of artworks. We can digitize them all, but at some point, you know, we digitize all of them, and it's saying in 50 years, 100 years, we don't have anything else to sell. So, you know, we are back to the same problem as before. So what do you do it? You create a carry commission. You create a smart contract that checks always if there is a transaction on the art piece that they introduce. And if there is a transaction, you take a commission and you pay them out. So even if transaction is between future investors, right, dealing forward, they can still benefit from that and create a new revenue stream. They can retire in future, right, having this revenue stream. They can pass on their address to their beloved ones, right, when they die, so that they benefit from the art they created, and so on, right? You can imagine the possibilities only thanks to the blockchain. I think everyone will benefit from that, and already I think more than 60% of online art dealers, marketplaces, they believe blockchain will be the biggest revolution in the coming years for art. And I think they don't even realize how big it will be, right? Because it benefits everyone, right? Investors can make more money. Collectors can finally buy the pieces, whether digital art like Performance or digital masterpiece like Mona Lisa, they can buy pieces that they couldn't buy before. Then you have artists and museums creating new revenue streams, all good for them. Artists love this idea. And then you have the society, right? How can you digitize the whole culture? Well, now you have a model that you can monetize, and then you make money, and then the whole society can access the whole culture for free. We are building the infrastructure for the future of art investments and donations, and I will be happy to answer all of your questions later in the next session.
Now, as our next speaker, I'd like to have Dr. Andreas Hauri. He is the former CTO of Mila AG and the current startup incubator mentor at F10 FinTech Incubator. So please welcome Dr. Andreas Hauri to the stage.
Trust. I trust you. That sounds really positive. I trust you. It's a positive ring to it. But is it though? Is it positive? Because oftentimes in my life, I don't have any choice but to trust. Every day when I use this, I trust. The question is, every day you need to trust the bank. Every day you need to trust that they handle your money correctly, but you don't have the choice of not to do it. And that's exactly what blockchain is going to give you. That's the why you need blockchain. It's a trustless system. Here in the blockchain, you don't need to trust anyone with your money. You are the only one responsible for it. No one else has influence over it on the blockchain. So the question though is, trustless, it's hard to grasp, right? And also for me, it was hard to grasp, and it was really a long journey until I arrived there, that this is really the thing that blockchain gives you. Because what you usually see, what usually happens, you get these backgrounds with really cool animations and particles flying around. And what you see is, you see all these claims, is super fast, distributed, fault-tolerant, secure, time-stamped. But you hear all of these attributes that the blockchain really has. It does have these attributes. And these attributes are necessary, but to do what? What do you get out of it? And what you get out of it is the trustlessness. The problem is, though, trustless systems, they have they have these weak points. And also the blockchain often is still, the blockchain is used for these things. The question is, what's the problem? The problem is the human factor, because you need a ground truth. You need to have the ground truth on the blockchain that you can even trust this system, right? So the problem is that there is what they call in the blockchain space the oracle. Someone needs to tell the blockchain what is actually true and what is false. And often these are external resources, and external sources are prone to error. And that means that even if you put something on the blockchain, it's not necessarily helping you to make a trustless system, because as with security, the weakest point in a system is where it can fail. This is what many people are promising you, to make stuff onto the blockchain, but they fail at exactly this point because you don't know whether you can trust the original sources. So the question remains now, so you're asking me, where is now the real value? Where can I apply this trustlessness, which is super up there and I cannot grasp it? And for me, the killer app is really value, putting value onto the blockchain. And of course, the more it is just contained in the blockchain, like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where the Bitcoin and Ethereum is even generated by the system itself, so you don't have anywhere where you breach the trustlessness. So these are the interesting systems where you maybe, if you have really good records, you can put it on the blockchain, and there you have the possibility then to make the trade and everything working, coming from that trustless, and these are good applications. Yes, so what I wanted to give you tonight is a framework of how to judge what's a worthy cause for the blockchain. Because you always need to remember, why are we doing this? You shouldn't be blinded by all these hows and all the implementation details. So with this, I'm finished, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. So blockchain is basically something everybody's talking about right now. Most of you know it because of Bitcoin and because you read it so much in the news, and everybody knows that they went up to 20,000K, but nobody really still understands what blockchain basically is. You know, for example, blockchain basically does one thing: it replaces third-party trust through a mathematical proof, basically. Right? So how is it going to change, especially now in the finance sector? Like, how long is it going to take that these changes are going to be graspable?
Yeah, so from my standpoint, it's really hard to tell, because no one can predict the future, right? But I think the banks will still be there, because of course, they're going to go through a change, and they're probably going to adopt the technology. I even hope that Switzerland is one of the first countries to do so, to bring the Swiss francs onto the blockchain, because that would the currency that would very much make sense, because then you could really own your money, and the banks would create around the Swiss francs an infrastructure of services, because that's exactly what is needed. That's exactly what is needed in the blockchain space. No one can really use it at the moment. We need to build services around all of these monetary and all of these assets, what they are doing as well, right? You need to be able to trade it with a user-friendly interface and all of these things. So I think there we will see a lot of change. So I think it's more of a shift. Of course, I mean, my credit card won't go away. I don't think so. I mean, maybe in 20, 25 years. But it's the revolution, I think it is coming.
So do you think that, for example, when we talk about trust, like everybody talks about trust, but you said something before, it's a human factor, okay? When we talk about the human factor, it's when we talk, for example, about algorithms. Like, for example, a blockchain is an algorithm, but who makes the algorithm? It's basically a human. So about the blockchain, and this may be something that I can ask you, is maybe already the algorithm where blockchain is based off corrupted, or does it have to evolve, or is it even allowed to evolve?
Technology is a tool, right? And then we can use it for good or for bad. So my view, there is, like, technology cannot be corrupted, right? The use of it can be corrupted.
So basically what's going to change is, instead of people saying we are putting it on the database, they're going to say we are putting it on the blockchain, for example.
this is what currently is happening, right? So people are just taking the old business models, adding the word blockchain to it, and that's done, right? That's not how it will move forward, right? It's exactly the same as it was in 1990s, right? In 1990s, in the dot-com bubble, when people were basically putting on the internet everything that was offline. Now we are putting on blockchain everything that's online. And then the next stage is to finding a real application for a blockchain. And I don't think we found that many. Like most of the companies I see, they don't need blockchain.
When we talk about, for example, basically for me, Switzerland was always like the blockchain of the world. Okay, because it's secure, trustfulness, etc. Because right now, most of those, everything you hear mostly about blockchain right now is in Zug.
Yes.
So, but I think Switzerland in general could or will become a leading factor globally. What do you think?
That really depends. I mean, of course, we hear the most, we're primed to hearing about Zug and Zurich, but we will see what really comes through. But especially Zug is at the moment really well placed for having all these foundations here that did ICOs. So that's why it's a hub. And I think that's great that Switzerland, that people here in Switzerland really took this on them to get them here and to do these things, to be one of the first to try this model, because I think it's a great model.
So is blockchain maybe something, especially when it comes to governments, something that they don't even want to have? Because you said maybe we put the currency on blockchain, but is this actually something that the government would like to have?
Eventually, I think yes. But the problem is always that in the beginning of a technology, and there's a lot of hype happening, and people are abusing it, right? And of course, I mean, if there's easy money to make, there will always be people that exploit this. But there can be really valuable stuff on the blockchain. And as you said before, it's really like this, that people are now searching for the true value of it. And I think it is this trustlessness where you can put this, right? And I think then it's a new model, and people will support the technology eventually. I mean, of course, they just want to protect people from fraud. That's their intention as a regulator.
I think it also sounds much more like a movement when we talk about blockchain, that it's a much higher thing. And I think we talked a little bit before that there's a big social component on blockchain, basically. And this is why people are basically backing it up, because we are moving away from central trusted structures like banks and so on, and giving, basically we are democratizing data, okay, making it available for everyone. So are there any other companies right now working on similar approaches like you do right now?
Not exactly on what we do. What we are building is the whole infrastructure, so all those three things that I described. There are companies who are, the most obvious thing is that you're trying to solve the ownership, right? So you're trying to provide a certificate of physical art on the blockchain, but coming to your example with the land, it's exactly the same, is that like, if you say this fake picture is now certified on blockchain, it's still a fake picture, just with a certification on the blockchain, right? It doesn't change that much. So I think like there are some companies who are trying to solve but individual features, and you cannot do that. Like if you want to solve it, you need to solve the whole system.
When we talk about, like, let's say, for example, we take the blank collar philosophy, and this is basically putting the human in the center of everything. How is basically blockchain going to change humanity? How is it going to change also companies and the people within the companies?
I think it's a responsibility, because you are taking on more responsibility. If you have your money on the bank, right, the money's on the bank, and if you lose the key to your, if you lose the PIN code to your card, go to the bank and they help you with getting, again, access to your funds. But how many people you have seen that have lost their crypto key? So it means you are getting more responsible for yourself, and you have to take this responsibility on, and that's going to be interesting.
Do people know this?
Whether people know, I don't think so, but it's going to be interesting how people will react to that if they are suddenly in this situation, because many people have crypto and they're not aware of it.
What happens if I lose the Mona Lisa?
So we have announced from it. So basically we only can allow, because of the legal reasons, we only can allow verified users, so we can verify as a safeguard. So we don't need to be a part of the process, but if process fails, there is someone you can turn to help to solve it.
But then you're again a third-party trusted advisor, right? Is it more an advisory, or is it basically you're holding?
The difference is that you can deal fully without us, right? You just once you get registered, again, a legal requirement, then you can deal fully without us. And you can also view like all the smart contracts. So for example, the fees or the carry commission is on the blockchain. So people can just look at it, right? You don't need to trust. So right now, you even if you sign a contract, like how do you follow up on the contract? Right? Do you follow this person and check if every time they sell an artwork, they actually pay you a commission? Like there's no way to do that. So even if you have a signed contract with someone which is legally binding, you have almost no way of enforcing it, especially if you're an artist or a museum that has other things to do than following, and suing people. With smart contracts, just smart contract is there, everyone can see it and it works. And you can check if it works.
People think that it's always bad to have a third-party trusted institution like banks. But if they fall away and you lose your key, you basically can lose everything. So,
I think if I may add to it, there is a middle solution, right? So there is a solution where people might be upset with some institutions because not of the help they get from those institutions, but of the control those institutions have over them, right? If you can get more transparency and blockchain offers you a free, and you find a model in between where you have institutions to help you, but you, for example, own your funds and you can deal with your own funds and no one can freeze your funds, then you suddenly start also treating those institutions differently, right? Because they don't come from the position of power. They need to help you so that you want to work with them, right? You need to convince people that you add value rather than to enforce the control or your authority over them. You need to earn it, right, in other words.
I have a question. You said blockchain will be a revolution for art. That gave me the idea to say it the other way around. Would you agree that art could be a revolution for blockchain? To spread it further. And the second question is simply understanding. Why would it not be possible to sell a painting just without using the blockchain, without using a contract? Why would this not be possible in the future?
You mean selling like a digital masterpiece, right? Digitized thing? Without the contract, like somehow transferring it?
I simply don't really understand it yet. I understand what the blockchain is, but what would keep me from selling a piece of art against cash without any contract?
So the way you would do with those digital masterpieces, they only exist digitally, and to transfer ownership, you transfer it on the blockchain. So it's visible that you are doing it. If you, let's say, you could try to gamble a system and say you attached, you sell it for 0, right? And then they pay you, But then everyone sees that you sold it for 0, so maybe the next person is not willing to pay, 5 million for it, because if it was sold for 0, like this is what you are getting. You are getting this transparency, so people can choose to be anonymous, but you see what happened with it, how often it was sold, for how much, etc. Right? So also it creates you in a buyer a trust that when you go and buy an artwork, someone is not just selling it for times the value, right? You see how it appreciated. Similar is with the real estate, right? There are companies who track the real estate so that you can be sure that you are paying some premium, but not insane premium, or you're making a good deal, and that can be implemented. So to your point, it could be possible, people could find a way to try to gamble the system, but it wouldn't work in their advantage.
But I think also what you just mentioned is very, very important. There are always technologies, and you always bet, for example, in blockchain, we bet that finance is going to be the enabler for blockchain. But you are right, because it could be actually art, okay? Because it's a problem that's so old. So I think, and this happens so many times with technology. You have a focus on a totally different industry, but it could be like art, who basically could be the enabler for this. Or would you say it's still going to be finance?
It really depends. I mean, it could work in the finance industry. What I know is that there will be a niche first where it really works, and we see it emerging. At the moment, this niche seems to be fundraising. This seems to be really working on the blockchain because everyone's doing that through that.
The ICOs.
The ICOs, yeah.
Okay.
So it might. But these are the early adopters, right? And then you need to this bridging the chasm, right? Yes. You need to get to the masses, and where this exactly where it's going through, I don't know, and where it's applied, I don't know either. It's really no one can predict the future.
Just regarding the idea for your art-based blockchain solution, is there actually an appetite for transparency within art transactions? Because it seems to be a key market that people look into for money laundering, is buying art in cash and transacting it then in other markets for cash to have a vaguely clean transaction there, simply to launder it. Or say in the case for security, if I say buy the Mona Lisa for $1 billion and I put it in my house, what then, if you do provide that transparency, says, well, this guy's got $1 billion art piece in his house. Would I really want people to know that I've actually do possess that? For digital assets, I understand where you're coming from, but for like tangible, actual art pieces like that.
So starting from the second point, you can choose to be anonymous on the platform, right? You don't need to disclose who you are, so that's easy. I mean, I think that solves the problem. In terms of that people use it for specific malicious purposes, I would say we don't want to be there. I think there is just if you look at all the art reports, what people buying art, what they name as problems, price transparency, I think 86% of people have a problem with that. Ownership, being afraid you buy a fake, more than 60%, and even the current owners, you know, you are paying 30–40% fees on it, right? So if the art market is $50 billion, you know, the fees are like 20 billion. Right? So that's already like the instant profit that you give back to investors, right? And there will be some investors who will want to take that on. And also, if you look like how many wealthy individuals will be in the next 5 years, it's unprecedented. 1 million people. They mostly are starting. They have no connection to the art world, right? And you know, they made money in legit ways, simply technology or you know, China, Asia, and they will want to buy art. And you know, whether they will buy it on those new platforms that suit them more and are more designed in the way they think, or go to this old-fashioned, you know, making a phone call, making a bid, and then someone else bids you over. You don't have a clue who that was, why. So that's our target group are mostly people who are coming new to this market, and people, this 86% that are just fed up with the fees and transparency. That's enough for us.
Is there a possibility basically to really be anonymous on blockchain?
There are certain projects like Monero and Verge that are really, they are tumbling the money, and it's really sophisticated zero knowledge proof stuff, which to be honest, I've never gotten into, but there are anonymity solutions, but the question is, can you figure out through the metadata whether these people are really the people they are? So time will tell. Time will tell whether this is a good thing or really a bad thing that it's so transparent. Because as you said, in Bitcoin, from the first transaction, I can follow the money.
Yes.
As I understand, the security and the trustworthiness of the blockchain is based on computation power. And what will happen if some substantial advances will be made on quantum computing? Can we prevent from tumbling these card houses down? Can we avoid this?
So with classical encryption, things that we are used to, it's actually, as you said, in theory, when the quantum computers are here, you can, in theory, crack this. But what there are also encryptions which are quantum resistant. So what would happen is there are actually already blockchains out there that claim to be quantum resistant, but we will see whether this is really true. But people could move the system, right? And yeah, you would have to re-encrypt stuff. But I think there are ways around it. I mean, there's always this game, right? That you have the attackers of the system and you have the people preventing the attacks. Yeah. But there are actually more. I mean, the bigger threat is really that you have like the blockchain is not run by anyone, right? And that this whole system of is it worth something or not? If this completely collapses and people don't mine anymore, that means that the system will not be secure anymore. And this is, I think, the bigger threat than really when it's super big and everyone's super stoked about it, that quantum computers will come along and breach the system.